Hey, you
Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live Leadership Series, the inaugural session. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and the founder and the CEO of E equals Y. Each week, we dive into fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. There's no right way to lead. It's all about being authentic, aware, and consistently guiding our teams to deliver results. And we achieve this through the E3 Leadership Guide, expressing vision, engaging effectively, and executing with precision, all powered by emotional qualities. So, as we meet each leader, let's uncover what drives them, exploring their unique leadership style, core values, and the experiences that have shaped their approach, as well as their adaptability in diverse situations. Before we get started, I invite everyone in the comments to introduce yourself, share your profiles, meet each other, and pose questions. We'll address as many of your questions as we can throughout our discussion. First, let me introduce you to Nigel Franklyn. Nigel is a servant and transformational leader and execution focused business partner. He's the Senior Director of Finance and IT at Propalo Center for Yoga and Health, and also the founder of Me Inc. But in reality, Nigel is a really good friend that I met about 5 years ago in Grenada. And it was interesting because we both started our careers in CPAs. We're both Aries, about the same age. We both love golf, and we truly believe in servant leadership. But for as many similarities that we have, we can sometimes be polar opposites. So, where I have a ton of red energy running to the fire, his primary color is green, empathy and caring about others. He has followed the accounting path. He's an exceptional golfer. And I admit, and it's hard to admit this, Nigel, but you really do kick my butt in golf now. And since we first met, we knew we had a lot of experiences to share with each other. And we have been meeting weekly to inspire each other on our journeys. We hold each other accountable. We spar on different ideas. And ultimately, we become a sounding board for each other. Many times we'll end the discussion and go, wow, I really wish we had recorded that because others would benefit from what we have to share and what we've been going through in our challenges. And that's really how this live session has come to fruition. We want to share with you different points of view, different thoughts, etc. So let's kick things off. Many of you know my tagline, or maybe you don't. I'm a nurturing driver. I love to get things done, but I've learned that I have to care for others to be able to make sure that happens. So, Nigel, tell us a little bit about yourself. How would you describe your own leadership style and preferences? What
uh,
energizes you?
First I'd like to say I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. And um, as you just shared the fact that we've met almost weekly since 2019, it's just kind of sobering, right? So I so appreciate you. I think um, you've been there for highs, lows, in betweens, and everything else. And for anyone's listening now, I did not play her to say anything about the golf stuff. That was on her own. Um, Kathy, and reflecting on it as I heard you say, servant and transformational leader. Um, and I think part of my growth, and I would say my tagline is awareness plus action equals growth. And I kind of started just boiling it down to wanting the opportunity to do good work or impactful work with good people. And as a leader, it's that ability or propensity, longing to create that environment where we can all be our best. And that probably comes from my background as an athlete, however long ago that is. But like that's how I kind of define the leadership, my leadership approach now, and what motivates me just to be better a little bit every day.
I like it better, a little bit better every day.
Yeah, it's that growth mindset that also often we talk about, but not it's kind of hard to pin down. And I think growth is the attitude of being willing to show up every day, um, just trying to be a little bit better than you were the day before.
Yep. And you said the word awareness. We've talked about this quite a bit, but to me, I think that is a leader's superpower. What are your thoughts on what a leader needs to be aware of?
So you know what? I'm going to put it in my context, right?
Good.
I think a lot of it is um, preferences, biases, um, being open, understanding that my way is not the only way, and there could be a better way. And I think that is kind of where I'm leading to, right? The awareness that I am showing up with just the load of my experiences, and that might not serve us all well in the current effort, right? So, you know, I think the awareness is that understanding of, to be a good leader, it's not treating people the way that you want to be treated, but treating them in the way that they want to be treated, because that's what's going to drive engagement. That's what's going to drive discretionary effort. So I think that is one of the shifts that I would say: awareness of my preferences, my biases, the opportunities for me to grow and learn, and then putting that out into the environment that I'm working in. I think that's kind of how I'm looking at awareness these days. Can I share an interesting stat, because we talk about this? But the awareness also is not just understanding; it is being able to attach action to that awareness, right? So there was a study that was done, I believe, it said that 85% of us would deem or label ourselves as self-aware, and if we measure self-awareness as knowing what the next action step is to take to move forward, I think the that percentage drops down to about 15%. So although it's very important, I think that space of being aware is something that we all need a lot of work in.
So, do you have a good example? Sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here of putting action with that awareness.
I'll give you the simplest one. Um, we are working on a deck a few days ago, and it was something as simple as um, understanding that the formatting that I want the deck in is just the formatting that I want the deck in, and just backing away from that. It was also something as simple as the understanding that as we were going through the deck, the team, we celebrated. Hey, this is we're proud of what we're doing. We've done good work. And there was one piece of the deck that was missing. And rather than saying, hey guys, I think we missed this and we should do it, it was saying, hey, we should continue putting in an ROI slide for the financial aspects of this project. So it's just that way of like making sure that I'm integrity with my words and my actions, right? And I think that's the approach. It's a very, very simple stated way of saying it, but I think those are really two really good ones. Um,
Yeah, and I like that last one that you're talking about because it's interesting. Rather than saying something's missing, it's let's add something. So it's a very positive switch in that and action that you take on helping people feel good about themselves, right? Because if they've gotten, I'm sure in that scenario, you're probably about 80%, 90% there, right? You're missing one thing, but you're focusing on, hey, we got a lot of this. Let's add in this last piece of it, and this will make a killer.
yep,
So and one of the things I'm reading some of the comments here, and Ralph came in and said, treating people the way they want to be treated, right? That remembering how other people show up, how they like to be communicated, is always just so important in leadership. So
yeah,
the
totally
other
agree.
thing, and then it's just, and I was having a conversation earlier today, and I think it's important also to realize that how your message is received is not always the same way, right? Like you think you're coming across as empathetic, or you think you're coming across as, very precise with your words, and someone else can completely hear it differently.
100%. So the team, I actually had this conversation with the team after, right? Because someone, when we kind of did a postmortem,
Hmm.
and we were like, this is what went well. How did everyone feel about, this was our goal. This is how we executed. How do we feel about the results? I think that's one of the really good feedback loops that we should stay in. And someone actually came forward and they said, I think the ROI slide, um, we could have known about that earlier. But the challenge as a leader now is that oftentimes the team will want the independence or the agency to do the project. And I actually, the conversation I had with the team was, well, that's one approach to it. But here's what I could have said: I gave you the full agency of the project. I could have then beat you up as saying you missed on this, or I chose the fact that, hey, can we do this together? Can we do an estimate? It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be directionally okay. And I think that was the other thing too that's coming up: this seeking perfection. So there's at least there should come some point when you put the pen down, but then you should feel good about that. So yes, I think it's a challenge to to kind of go back and forth in those two spaces, but it's been one of the larger challenges for me. And I think you I didn't realize until I was living in Asia that just someone seeing you, they start making all of the assumptions that they can possibly do about you. And that is what, as a leader, that's one of the things that I'm trying to let go of, like constantly thinking, constantly in that space of wanting to know that I'm being received well, because that causes anxiety on my end. But in the same way, I think it's part of my recent um, uh, evolution, if you will, of being more so focused on my intention, mining the impact, but not being too bogged down by the very minor details of some interactions.
Yeah, I think that's good, and it's a lot easier to say some of this than it is to do it. And so when you can bring the action into it, that's where you have the growth. So I really do love your statement there, right? Awareness plus action equals growth, and that's something I think we should all add into our repertoire.
Yep.
Also, I'm hearing you say feel, right? That's something that isn't always talked about in business and leadership, right?
Well,
Because
it's well, now, like, think about it, right? Coming from large financial institutions to working in a wellness center, it's very, very different. But I think the feel portion of it takes the the mental machine out of it, right? Because if the one way of tripping up a conversation is to ask someone what they think about something, I think that sometimes is opening Pandora's box. But in this scenario, how you feel about it, you could be proud, you could be happy. It's a language that's very, very different, but I think it is a way of meeting the human condition in whatever industry you're in,
yeah,
right?
I agree, and I think I learned this a long time ago, but I it keeps coming back often. Is um, being I just totally lost my train of thought. But you can't tell anyone how they feel.
Right.
That's what it was, right? Your feelings are your feelings. No one can take that away from you. And when you can understand how people feel, then all of a sudden your conversations are very different, right? Like, how do you feel about this? Okay, I can't argue with how you feel. It is what it is. What I can do is help explain things maybe in a different way, or maybe I can help, provide more guidance or, lead in different ways. But once you know how someone feels, then you can react appropriately.
But what was interesting though, about that, and we've had this really deep conversation, right? Because when we started, and the audience should know, you called me an a-hole because you thought that I didn't share enough about myself. So we met and I had a surface conversation with you. And then you're like, well, I guess that's the whole concept of wearing a mask. So I had my mask on and I was like, people usually don't care, right? And that's something that we went back and forth on. And you always have challenged me to show up as my authentic self. And what we've experienced over time now is that, and I remember sharing this with you very recently, it's now that we've developed trust, is that I hear you in a very different way. I feel in a different way about the things that you would share with me. But I think it's the time and the trust we've developed where you can be. extremely critical of me, but I'm like, okay, this is something that I need to work on. It's not like, Kathy, this is another time where you're hurting my feelings today. It's usually like, all right, I have to hear this. This is something that I need to work on, right?
Yeah. Yes, and I often tell people ahead of time that that's going to be my tendency, right? I give you the heads up because I really do care, and I believe that honest feedback helps all of us grow. You talk about awareness and action equals growth. I think being able to hear some stuff that we forget or we don't want to hear are the things that help us grow the most. But I agree. I have to earn trust with people before I can go there.
What one of the biggest parts is like usually now when you so in probably your growth curve is whenever you have something that's challenging to say, you will ask. And I'm like usually I'm bracing myself and smiling. It's like just say what you have to say. But that is an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
Um, Ralph just asked a question. How do you any tips on how to remain self-aware?
Hmm.
Um, Ralph, I think the Clarity 4D is a good way. The emotional intelligence assessment is a good way. And so, for instance, that's one of the. I am a data-driven person, so I gravitated towards the emotional intelligence assessment, but it lines up well with the Clarity 4D. Um, and how I do it is I do an assessment every year. I get feedback every year. I find a coach. I think it's important to hold that mirror up to yourself as often as you feel comfortable. So that's kind of that's my tips on remaining self-aware. Kathy,
Yeah, no, I think those are some great ones. Having a profile, and this is something Nigel, you and I did early on, is defining what your leadership profile is and really knowing what are your values, what are your non-negotiables, what's your leadership style. The more that you can explore and put that out there and share it with others, that also helps build those relationships with people and build the trust because they know
absolutely.
you know I've admitted I have a lot of energy. It comes across as bossy. And so I tell everyone, I can come across bossy. I don't intend to be mean or aggressive, but that is my tendency. And therefore, if I am too aggressive and it bothers you, tell me and I will try to adjust. But I'm telling you, it's because I care. So let's work on it together. But it's being aware.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
think we'll try to put in the comments a link awareness module. So we actually put together a module where it provides a lot of the questions on how to become more self-aware on your values. Doing a Clarity 4D. We should put the link in there, Nigel, for emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah,
So
Kathy, I should say too, and just a plug for it was amazing to see to be part of the development of the three E3 workbook, and then to have my team use that as a way of us level setting, right? As a way of us learning more about each other, what we value, what our preferences are, and how we can actually work better together. But then to see how you've actually used the E3 leadership workbook at different levels of leadership and team building has also been really, really good. So I've had someone who went through your leadership boot camp as well, the E3 boot camp, and nothing but great things to say, right? So I just want to make sure that I give you your flowers as far as that's concerned, because it's something that I still reference. To prepare for our conversation today, I went through my E3 leadership workbook. So there you go.
excellent. I
All right,
love
all
it.
right,
Thank you.
all right.
I'm going to ask, Carrie or Imelda, who I think are on the line, if they could try to dig up that link to the awareness module. That'd be amazing, and put it in the chat. So let's move on a little bit around leadership. Tell me about either the best boss or the worst boss that you've ever worked for, and what some of those characteristics were and why.
Okay. The last time I was asked a question like this, I got a lot of backlash from the good bosses, the great bosses that I had who were not mentioned. So I would say I've had a lot of great bosses. Um, I won't name names, but I think what it comes down to is people who saw me, Nigel, and took the time to get to know me, treated me with respect, um, was curious about my background, my thinking, and they were willing to teach me as well, right? Wanted to cared about my development, cared about my growth. So I give you one really interesting thing, right? So and how I judge many of the leaders I'm with. So it took me about 8 years to arrive at the fact that I was narcoleptic. It took a lot of training, a lot of, but um, I didn't party, I didn't hang out. Most of what I did was work and work out. And there were not many leaders who would ask, "Are you okay?" And the ones who were able to do that, I thought went a much further, like got a lot more discretionary effort from me. So I've had a lot of good bosses, and as I distill it, and as I just playing back what I just said, is the people who had good human skills, right? We talk about it as soft skills, but I think it's human skills, treating people as people, making people feel seen, heard, and understood. And as a black man, um, I think that that is something that goes much further for me than anything else, right?
Yeah. And I it is about being seen and heard and understood, right? All of that. And sometimes it could be so hard to teach that, right? So it's helping leaders understand how much that makes a difference, right? Like, do you feel like they naturally had that, or how do you think some of their best leaders gain that knowledge?
I think it's work, right? Like none of us are born gifted with any one skill. We all have the same opportunity to learn and grow. But you know what? You know, I should say this because in just one different way, it's understanding the strength and weaknesses of your team deeply enough so that you operate on a constant basis with everyone. So that's the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is about seeing everyone on the team and giving everyone the opportunity to be their best self, to contribute, to feel like they're having an impact. So I do believe that it's something that can be learned, but you would want to have to seek the self-awareness, right? You would want to have to be better.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking and I'm thinking back to some of our conversations early on, very early on, and you said, "Are you going to have a DEI specific, element in E3 leadership?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I think it should be part of everything that we do, right? Like every leader should be, and I think every human, right, should be waking up caring about people." But sometimes you do have to bring awareness that it is different and you have to make extra effort in different situations and go out of your comfort zone to make sure everyone else is being heard and seen and feels included. And it's not easy.
So that is so spot on, right? Because I think, and I will say it in this way: I'm a first generation college grad. I migrated to the U.S. from the Caribbean, and what was interesting was that a lot of the earlier part of my career, the assumptions that people would make about kind of what I am doing, or I'll give you the typical example. And now that it's the Olympic stuff, I started my career right after the Olympics, right? Like 2020. And I started working around that time. But I had spent just the last 10 years of my life working out. I was a multi event athlete. And what was interesting and very sobering is that someone would see you and see me in shape. And there's one person who would go, "This guy likes lifting heavy stuff up and putting it down." And there's someone else who would go, "There's probably something curious about his story that we can figure out where he was," right? The the percentage of people who would be curious to figure out the story about a person who woke up for the last 10 years every day trying to be a little bit better, has a different approach to things, um, is so much smaller than the individuals who are happy making an assumption and just standing firm in that assumption. So as I've looked at it over my leadership journey, for the a large part of my leadership experience was to never treat people, never do to others the things that I didn't appreciate someone doing for me. So I didn't necessarily, let's say now you're putting forward, managers aren't taught to be leaders. We keep getting promoted based on our competence or accomplishment at one level. And it doesn't say that you have the skill sets that's necessary to move to the next level. So for the first 10 years of my career, I learned a lot by what not to do rather than what to do, right? So I think it is hard. You can learn it, but you kind of have to want to be there. For me, I want to have the impact of helping people be their best selves in whatever they do. So I kind of want to be better. I wake up and I try to do that as often as possible.
Yeah, and I know that, and that's why I really value your leadership and what you bring to the table. But you just said something that is really interesting. I think so often people forget that a management position and being a leader is a choice, and it's a different job. It is not about doing what you've always done well and doing it with other people. It's about stepping into a very different role, and your responsibility as the leader, is to make sure the team delivers results, right? That's ultimately what the job of a team is, to deliver a result. The leader has to help nurture, guide, grow the team, empower, and enable them. Pick the words, right? Remove obstacles, all of that. And it's a full time job to do the people management side of it. And that's what I think we're missing so much today, because we're not training managers. And it's something that has to be taught. You have to understand what it is.
But yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity for any organization. You can be so much better if your leaders are positive. I think there was this statistic that I heard um, that in a positive state of mind, we perform cognitively better, like more than 30%. So that's the way that I put it in some of the talks that I've done is that that's a 30% boost in productivity by saying good morning, good evening, please, and thank you. So could you imagine if the training goes on and individuals understand the importance of that, how much more impactful um, we can be as leaders?
Can I take that statistic and add it into some of our stuff? Because that is spot on. The productivity, just by saying please, thank you, good morning, good afternoon, whatever, how was your day, just you're going to drive up productivity, assuming it's all genuine, right? And I say that I've heard people say words because they're told they have to,
Yep.
and it's about being authentic and genuine.
But I so sometimes this is the struggle that I have now because sometimes I think it's going too far. So in the book, the first 90 days, like what I to understand the organization for some of the smaller teams that I've had, like I went through an interview. I wanted to know who you were, your background. Do you have kids? What are you interested in? What do you like about your job? What don't you like? If there were things that we can actually do for the first 6 months to be impactful, what would it be? So I asked the entire team the same question, but I would sit down with everyone to get it. And I think that's how you figure out give additional team members the opportunities that they deserve, right? It's the guy who is going to school on the side to do data science. Well, there's a data project. Well, let's give him the opportunity rather than the perceived superstars in the organizations who will just kind of be the same well that we go to all the time.
Yeah.
But that might be just me carrying that around. I've been trying to balance what's too much, but I do care. But at what point do um, you kind of drop off from being authentic, if you will?
Yeah, well, I go by my dad, what he taught me. Treat everyone with dignity and respect, and you'll be in a good starting place. And that's how I always think about it. Well, Nigel, we're just at the bottom of the hour and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do you have one piece of advice or suggestion or guidance that you would give the audience?
Um, I think it's just whatever you're doing, right, as leaders, if you try to make things just a little bit better than the way you found it, it's a really simple way to start trying to be better. It also is it is a really interesting way to start looking at oneself, right? So if you are taking the ownership for making things better, and that means starting with you, then you will continue to seek self awareness. You will continue to be better. You will seek out the E3 program. You will find ways just for you to be better and the teams to be better, right? So it's a simple start. It's a simple way to start, but it's a very powerful way to start from the beginning.
Excellent. Well, Nigel, thank you so much for joining me today on this inaugural session of Live and the Voices of Leadership. And, some of the takeaways for me from today: awareness plus action equals growth. Awareness is a superpower, and having the human skills are the most important things that a leader can do. And that's where success. And oh, that was the other one was 30% improved productivity when people are in a good place and feeling good. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Nigel. Thank everyone for joining us, and we will see you next Friday live. And hopefully, we'll have Nigel back and we can have some more conversations.
I appreciate you.
I
I
appreciate
appreciate
you.
the work you're doing in the world.
Thanks, Nigel.
Bye.
Take
Talk
care.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.